makes me feel more connected to my body and slows my nervous system down rather than riling it up.
Welcome to Move, Sweat, Discover, the podcast where fitness meets self-discovery. Today we have Ziggy Makant. So Ziggy, fitness trainer, pre and postnatal certified coach, ambassador for a athleisure brand, Lululemon. I'm going to read a little bio from you, and I'm going to actually use my magic
Spectacles.
touch. Yeah. So Ziggy, as a mother of 2 boys and a girl, Ziggy is extremely passionate about all things motherhood, parenting, and wellness. She was born and raised, for the most part, in Hong Kong. Prior to her first pregnancy in 2016, her focus was strength and conditioning, body composition, transformation, and weight loss through both nutrition and training. After having children experiencing both vaginal and cesarean recovery, her efforts have shifted into helping women feel physically and mentally prepared for pregnancy, labor, and delivery, and to recover both emotionally and physically in postpartum. After the birth of her first son, Ziggy experienced perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, and struggling to find the time to exercise, even as a professional, she realized the importance of the motherhood community. She began by going to Bring Your Baby to Exercise classes, mums and bubs, and baby wearing workouts to create a space for mothers to connect, have fun, and move well. Her background is in psychology and is also a certified holistic life coach. She works exclusively with mothers and is the co-founder of the Mom Body Soul podcast, where they highlight both personal and professional stories related to the perinatal period and parental transition. That's a lot of big words that I'm like stumbling over. Welcome, Ziggy, to Move, Sweat, Discover.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. In doing a little bit of research for our chat today, I didn't realize how much you've gone through.
Just life?
Yeah, just life. I mean, everyone goes through just life, right? But you've had an incredible journey from fitness to kind of like nutrition expert to a motherhood advocate. Was there a defining moment in your journey that kind of shifted your mission so profoundly?
Yeah, the birth of that first child, I think. And I think all mothers or all parents will describe a moment, but like meeting your baby and then going through what we call the 4th trimester. So that first 3 months after you give birth, where your baby is technically meant to still be inside you. So if you look at any other mammal population, they have really long gestation periods because when they come out, they need to be able to survive themselves. They need to be able to walk and feed for themselves. Whereas humans, we have quite a short gestational period. It's only 9 months.
Yeah.
And that's because we have giant heads, because we have big brain that we use for many different things. And that makes us the superior animal. But that 4th trimester, baby needs mom. And there's something called kangaroo care. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like that feeling of needing to be close. That's why baby wearing is so important. Being near to the breast, being able to smell mom, hear her heartbeat. And they're like, babies are helpless. They need their parents to survive. And when you become a new parent, you also need people around you to help you survive because we're not meant to do this alone. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't shower. And I just thought I was going to be me plus a child. So I thought I'd be able to go like get mani-pedis and, you know, just go for coffees or whatever it was. Or yeah, and it was so much more than that. And part of that was I was 23 when I had my first child. So I was really young. Or I was 23 when I found out I was pregnant, 24 when I had my baby, and when he was 6 months, I turned 25. So I was really young, and being young, I thought I could do anything without much like thought about the actual logistics of things.
Yeah.
And it was the greatest gift. You know, it was also a gift that, and this is no secret, but my parents didn't support my pregnancy, and they decided we've got an estranged relationship. And that was also a gift because it just showed me like who was going to show up for me in my life.
Yeah.
You know, who was going to support me, who was going to be my community. And yeah, I think those so many pivotal moments of becoming a mother, going through pregnancy, creating a human life, and then being a quote unquote fit mom who prior to my first pregnancy, I trained 6 days a week, strength training. And then during my pregnancy, found out I had a condition called thalassemia minor, which is basically a genetic blood disorder where my red blood cells are funny shaped. And so they don't transport oxygen around my body very well. And it was the first time in my life that I felt really weak and like breathless, and that I didn't have the capacity to do things on top of just pregnancy. Pregnancy is such a demand on the human body, and pregnant mothers that train are phenomenal and amazing. And it's so beneficial for us to strength train and train cardiovascularly. But emotionally, I went from 6 training sessions to just 3 and was so tough on myself. Whereas like 3 training sessions pregnant is a lot for the average human being. And so those mental, physical challenges of going through pregnancy, adapting to your changing body and its changing needs, and then actually birthing a baby and preparing for birth, and then recovering from that postpartum, pelvic health-wise, abdominal strength-wise, and then learning how to look after this new little being when you're also trying to find out who you are as a mother. And I didn't really mourn my old life. I know a lot of mums do, because they have so much freedom. They're established in their careers. I didn't really have much of that because I was so young. So even though, yes, I was going through this big life transition and change that no one else my age was going through, I didn't grieve anything. I didn't like miss nights out or the freedom to travel because I was so in love with my baby.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Did you always want to be a mom?
Absolutely not. Like,
that was not the answer I was expecting.
Yeah. My sister was a young mom. She was engaged at 19, married at 20, had her first child at 21, and then proceeded to have more children. And I think she stopped with their 4th, and she was in her early to mid 30s. Okay. And so I had seen her entire like early 20s just taken over by motherhood, and I was not about that life. And then I became about that life.
Right.
And so I think that's just me in general, though, on a personal note, is I just go wherever life takes me, life be lifing.
Yeah.
And, I choose joy. I choose joy. Maybe that's not the smartest decision always.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the most practical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like doing what I like doing.
Was there ever then, this is, I guess, a bit of a controversial topic. Was there ever a point in your mind that you were like, I'm not going to have this baby. I'm going to live my young 20-year-old life kind of thing?
For me personally, no.
Okay.
Like it was like a switch in my brain got flicked, and I was like, this is my baby, and I'm going to do everything at all costs to protect this baby. And it was a conversation because my now partner, we've got 3 kids together. At the time, he was just like, well, I don't want to have a baby, okay, but I'll support whatever you want to do. And I was like, I'm having this baby with or without you. And, it's not always everyone's story. But for mine, he stuck around and we made things work and we made things happen.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been easy. There was a lot of growing up that we both had to do. He was in his late 20s. And not everyone steps up. And stepping up doesn't mean that you're perfect.
Yeah.
It means that you show up and you try your best. So for me, I was never a pro-lifer. But then when I was met with the decision, I was like, absolutely, I'm going to keep this baby. And I've supported many mothers, many friends through termination because they ask me what to do. And I'm like, well, that's not my decision to make. Yeah. You have to assess your life circumstance, who you think your partner is, whether or not you think you're going to have a partner. Those are big questions. But for me, no. Yeah. I always wanted to have my kids. And every child has been a surprise or a gift from the universe. And they were never planned. Whereas I know some people, especially where we live in Hong Kong, are extremely planned, organized, and meticulous. And I'm not one of those people in any aspect of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no shame in that. It's just, it is what it is. It happened. And I love my kids. They're great.
Yeah. How has your own personal experience kind of shaped how you are as a parent? Like you mentioned that you have an estranged relationship with your own parents.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think every parent goes into then parenting their own children saying, I will do things differently. I will never say the same sentences or whatever it is. And I feel like I've tried to do things better, but I'm not perfect. And there's this sort of movement with, I guess, the millennial parents that we are now of conscious parenting, which is really looking at your child as a whole human being, not just like this little human that you get to control, and trying to really listen to them, how they're feeling, and adapt to their needs as opposed to trying to mold them into what you want them to be. No one likes being controlled, like at any age. And it's really tough. I'm a yeller because I grew up in a house with a lot of yelling. But what I also am is a repairer, and I try to repair any millennial parent who survived the pandemic along with us would have probably heard of Dr. Becky. She's a fantastic resource. She was also, quarantined in her house with her children, and she's a psychologist who speaks to and works with parents as opposed to the children. And she would just have these really great basic scripts that all of us could use. So, her one big sentence that I try and say to my kids when I'm frustrated with them and I'm yelling is, you are a good kid. You're not a bad kid, but you're having a hard time. And I make them repeat it. I'm a good kid and I'm having a hard time. Because how can I, as an adult who has tantrums, expect my child who has no emotional skills to not have tantrums?
Yeah.
And we now know that we need to be able to self-regulate so that we can help them regulate. And that's kind of going back to that kangaroo care thing of your child wants to be close to you. They want connection. And so when my kid is melting down, the worst thing I could possibly do is melt down back with them. But I do it often. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but really like getting down to their level and trying to connect with them. And that's all we're trying to do as human beings anyways, is we're just trying to connect to each other and know that we exist and that we have value and that we're worth something and that we're loved.
I really like that. How do they respond?
Oh, sometimes it's fine. My kids I've got, as we were recording this, an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. And the 8-year-old really gets it. I feel like I look into his eyes and he's an old soul. And then I look at my 5-year-old and he just feels like his energy is so young and fresh and new. And he's like a puppy dog, totally lost. And he doesn't get it as much. He'll repeat the things and he'll say the things, but, he's now also just become a middle child. And we're trying to navigate the code switching that he has to go through of being an older brother and now having to care for someone and then being a younger brother who was the youngest and like the most doted on. So I think they get it. It's tough though. You never know if you're doing something right until they start asking for you to pay for their therapy later in life. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But I know that I feel better when I'm not a raging lunatic yelling.
Sure.
But the one behavior that I do not do that, was done to me as a child was ignoring. I was ignored a lot, given the silent treatment. And that's just my number one that I haven't done to my kids. I've never ignored them. I've expressed anger. I've showed them maybe not the healthiest ways of expressing anger. But I've expressed anger and then I've repaired when I haven't felt good about it. Which takes a lot of courage. And I was never apologized to as a child. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no. This is something that I've also been working on as in my adult life, to kind of recognize that, like, whilst right. Our parents didn't do things perfectly, and there's no rule book, but also they've kind of also learned from their parents who've learned from their parents, it's just a cycle, and everyone's just doing their best. And so I've really tried to kind of recognize that. And whilst there was no apologies, I just had to let it go and just be like, they were doing fine.
Yeah. We can accept the behavior that was done as just accepting that it happened without blame. And I think this a lot about my parents. They were doing the best they could with the tools that they had.
Yeah.
Right. And bring compassion to it and still know that it's not okay.
Yeah.
And I think about my dad, who was in the military, and his father was in World War II, and his father was in World War I, and everyone was like poor, rationed, So it was very different. Like for them, things were life and death. Like for them, things were a trauma response. Other people were allowed to hit your children. Like corporal punishment was normal in school.
Yeah.
And then trying to teach parents today that actually any form of hitting your child is considered child abuse, that the massive difference that has happened in the last 50 to 100 years when we think about who children are and that they grow up to be these people is immense. It's huge.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
Yeah. I've just have visions of not that I was ever hit with a belt, but I just have vision it's like, let's get the belt out and
or
that
a
would
ruler,
never
or
be
a slipper.
Yeah.
Object is close by.
That would be unheard of these days.
Yeah. All the teachers would be put into jail.
Yeah. A motherhood is often described as an identity shift. How has becoming a mother for you kind of changed the way that you see yourself? I guess personally and professionally.
Yeah, well, professionally, it shifted who I wanted to work with. So prior to having kids, it was just weight loss, muscle building, look hot in a bikini vibe. And that's what I guess the population wanted at the time. They wanted these ripped physiques. Everyone wanted to look bikini competition ready at all times. And I never did. I was never a bodybuilder. I never got on stage or anything like that, but I trained that way, and nutrition-wise was quite strict on myself for periods of time, as any millennial woman was. And I think having children really made me want to honor the motherhood transition more and how much our bodies go through, feeding and creating a human life, and then the massive energy dump and depletion that happens after you give birth. And whether that's a vaginal or cesarean delivery, your body has just undergone a massive withdrawal from its energy bank account and its health bank account. And it's more important that we're nourishing. And what's really fantastic is that in the last 5 to 10 years, the women's health data and the studies that are coming out, which are more retrospective studies, so looking at anecdotal things that women who have trained have said, or, because it's unethical to do studies on pregnant people. It's just looking more at forms, blah, blah, blah. But the research is catching up with things that we have just been experimenting with.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that I'm an evidence-based trainer. So I'm looking at what data is saying, and I'm giving my clients advice based on that, not just listen to your body. How do you feel? And a big part of pre and postnatal training is also pelvic health. And basically, I tend to work with everything in the torso area, from core, pelvic floor. And then if you're a breastfeeding mother, making sure that you're comfortable in breastfeeding and that you've got range of motion through the chest and shoulders. And I breastfed 3 children. I think I've breastfed for 5 years of my life.
Yeah.
I've got a hell of a lot of personal knowledge. And I forgot the question now, but how has motherhood changed who I am professionally?
And personally.
I think professionally it makes me want to do things better and create more spaces. So I run Fit Mama classes, and 100% of my clientele are mothers. I work with a small population of menopausal people, or perimenopausal women. But I really like that sort of like 2-year transition where a mom is like, right, I want to have the best birth possible. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel like an active participant in my birth. When someone says to me that they're like, I'm just going to listen to whatever my doctor says, I say no. Like, do not do that. You wouldn't do that with any other decision in your life. You'd be on Google, you'd be asking questions, you'd be asking the experiences of other people, you would be preparing yourself. Just like with a marathon, no doctor is going to be like, okay, go just do the marathon, show up on the day and hope for the best. We do that with birth all the time. We're like, oh, I'll just go with the flow. Don't go with the flow. Do your research. Prepare for this, especially because so many women experience birth trauma. And so preparing for that means making sure that you know how to engage and relax the pelvic floor. If you're planning for a vaginal delivery, you need to be able to relax your pelvic floor muscles. Everyone spends all their time tightening their pelvic floor, and then they cannot relax when it comes to pushing. Your vagina isn't the thing that pushes the baby out. It's just the exit. It's the doors. Your uterus is pushing your baby out. And so just even basic knowledge like that, so many people don't know. And it's Googleable knowledge. Yet I find myself in rooms speaking with my clients and educating them on these things because their doctors are busy, especially we have 2 systems in Hong Kong. We've got a public healthcare system and a private healthcare system. And in the public system, they're just trying to get you through. And they don't often have time to answer your questions unless you make the time and you say, these are my questions. What is this, this, and that? And then with the private healthcare system, they're similar. Like sometimes they don't have a lot of time. You have a 15-minute appointment that you're paying a lot for. And really you're paying for, the end result as opposed to the care. That is a really blanket statement. I don't like no system is perfect. But I think women, we have to do our own research and advocate for ourselves. And not just for ourselves. We have to make sure that our partners are on board with what we want and then work with our birth team to achieve as close to as possible the birth that we can have given the circumstances. So in Hong Kong, typically women who are giving birth now are older, because they have been career focused. I'm an anomaly, like an early 20s birth. Now I'm seeing women who are usually starting and trying at like 36, 37. And then most women are closer to 40. And you're usually at that time in a perimenopausal state. And so fertility is an issue. I deal with a lot of moms who experience, birth loss, late-term terminations, years of infertility, people who are having donor eggs and donor sperm, lots of solo moms by choice. So being prepared for the physical act of birth is even more important so that you can hopefully have better recovery postpartum and then like a better association of what your birth was. Like, and come away from that birth being like, that was amazing. I felt so empowered. I want to do it again.
Does being prepared for your birth include movement?
100%. So your pelvis is the seat of everything in terms of, so if we think just about anatomy, your pelvis is where baby begins their life, right? So we've got 3 pelvic organs. You've got your bladder, which connects into the urethra. You've got your uterus, which is where baby is growing, that connects into the vagina. And then you've got your bowel. Okay. And so when you're pregnant, you have lots of hormonal changes. You get this big increase in progesterone. Progesterone helps create like this mucus layer that stops anything from entering the uterus, basically, to protect baby and mom from infection. But progesterone also can make you really constipated. So then you have this giant thing happening in your bowel. So you can't release your bowels. And then you've got more load on the uterus as baby is growing. And then your bladder and all of these pelvic organs are getting shifted around. Then if we think about sort of like your external anatomy, things that lead into the pelvic floor, it's your glutes, your adductors, your abdominal muscles, your hamstrings, like everything is connected. So if we can make sure that moms are strong, as in they have the ability to stabilize the pelvis and carry these extra loads, plus the ability to be supple, be able to lengthen those muscles. And then as your spine is changing and your hips are widening to accommodate for your changing body in pregnancy, those different muscles, different ones get tighter and different ones get stronger. So if you think about the curve of a pregnant body, you get that big lower back curve. What's happening there is that your lat muscles, everything around there, your back muscles are getting shorter. And then your glutes are lengthening because they have to then accommodate. And then your hip flexors and your lower abdominals are getting tight, but then your belly muscles are lengthening. So what I try and do, because your body's literally changing every single day, is do the opposite of every single one of those movements to help mom stay strong and to have her move her hips and her body in different planes of movement so that she's not just strong linearly.
Yeah.
Which is, what most people do. We do things very like straightforwards. And there's a whole range of different conditions that are associated around the pelvis. So like low back pain, pubic pain, pelvic floor dysfunction, incontinence, leaking yourself when you don't want to is incontinence, prolapse, hemorrhoids. There's just a lot of really glamorous stuff that people don't want to talk about, but is really common. And a lot of it can be helped with some water, some fiber, and some good movement.
Well, that definitely answered my question. So I just feel that there's a myth or a belief that when once you're pregnant, don't do anything, don't lift anything. Yeah. Oh no, don't pick that up. The
which
baby.
Is the opposite. The only thing, so they've done lots of studies on this, and exercise, there is nothing to suggest that exercise causes loss or miscarriage. I think the only things that have been associated with loss and miscarriage are actually shift work. So people who don't have good sleep cycles. So if you're like a nurse or a flight attendant or something, like someone who's on rotating shift work. Exercise is great to stay strong. Like we're actually in a more catabolic state. We're in an insulin resistant state, which for sort of our layman's listener is my body is more fat storing. It's not muscle building at that time. And women have a tougher time building muscle anyways in comparison to men. And most of the data around exercise and nutrition is male data. And so we need to be strength training to just maintain whatever it is we have in that time. As well as, not this blanket statement of you don't want to gain too much weight because you don't want to have a big baby, but weight gain, having had 3 pregnancies and with my third being the one that I was the least active in, the most sick in, the oldest in, and then seeing women, who strength train twice a week versus once a week versus 3 times a week versus never. The ones who have better pregnancies and better postpartums are the ones who train more. Even if it's not a hard quote unquote workout, they are doing things to maintain whatever muscle and aerobic capacity that they have.
Yeah.
And we forget that like a natural delivery, natural meaning spontaneous labor, vaginal delivery, it's a physical event. Like it could last a couple of hours or it can last 3 days.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to get. So it's good to just have some management strategies to prepare your mind and your body for.
Yeah. Talk to me about your experience with perinatal and like anxiety disorder.
Yeah. So a PMAD, a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, is basically just this umbrella term that the industry uses now, the mental health industry uses, because it can be anything from depression, anxiety, OCD. And so how mine manifested for me in my first pregnancy was I had heard about baby blues, like you might just have some mood swings, but this usually goes away after a month when your hormones balance back out-ish. And mine was not that. I was a pretty happy, positive person and was just anxious about germs, about people coming to touch the baby, about tiny little things, like just very hyper aware, hyper reactive. Add on top of that, like poor sleep. And I have a wonderful friend. Her name is Dr. Tess Brown. She's now in the UK, but she used to be a Hong Kong-based psychologist here. And she talked about how she believed, that support systems were one of the biggest predictors for these mood and anxiety disorders. Because if you have no one around you supporting you to help you through this time, it is really lonely. And one of the pieces of work that she was really trying to do was kind of break taboos around, being a bad mom and mom guilt, because we all feel bad no matter whether you're doing a great job or an actual shitty job. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Swear. We all just feel really guilty about whatever the choices that we're making.
Yeah.
So I feel guilty that I'm not working. I feel guilty that I'm at work providing for my baby, but I'm not at home with my baby. Someone else is looking after my baby. And I thought that depression, postnatal depression, was that I had to want to kill my baby. I thought I had to have intrusive, homicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that. I thought that I had to want to sleep in bed all day. But I was absolutely in love with my baby and had so much motivation to get up and go and be with my baby all the time. But it was all that other stuff that I had never experienced before. And it was really big extremes of emotions. And I felt like it was kind of shameful to talk about it with people because I did seem really happy and they couldn't imagine that I wasn't happy. And what really saved me was connection. It was going for a dog walk every single morning with a woman who I bumped into who lived in my building who also had a dog and a baby, who was maybe 2 months ahead of where I was. And those mornings saved me every single day. And she just seemed like she had it all together and she knew what she was doing. And we would download information, be like, what did you try? What did you try? And she was someone I could cry to about like the struggles in my relationship or like the trials and tribulations of like wanting to work but not wanting to leave the baby, about my postnatal body, and later on, she told me that I saved her so many mornings, and I did not know it was a reciprocal relationship. It felt very one-sided. But that, to me, is why women need each other. And that's why motherhood and connection is so important, because it is so important for our mental health.
Yeah. Talk to me about like this whole idea that like mothers struggle to kind of like do it all. Like there's like a big pressure, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you help women prioritize, I guess, in this arena, like their physical health and like their mental well-being?
Yeah. So my husband and I joke that I'm not actually a trainer. I just chat all day and we just occasionally lift weights. But sometimes I think that's what people need. And
yes, yeah.
When I'm really strict on the data of what we need in terms of what your body needs to actually have gains or to see results, the guidelines are 2 to 3 strength training sessions a week, 1 steady state cardio a week. Most people aren't getting that. And a lot of the moms that I work with who are attracted, I guess, to my energy are moms who really can only fit in once a week because they are wearing multiple hats. They're either working full-time or part-time. They're still trying to pursue their own passions. They're trying to be really present for their kids.
Yeah.
And once a week might be all they have. And are they going to see gains? Probably not. Are they going to see life change? Probably not, but it's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
And then eventually they hit this point where they're like, okay, I'm ready now. I can do the twice a week. And in those sessions, I'm also then just listening to them download about their lives, which is important for their mental health, because I'm impartial. I have nothing to do with, their marriage or their husband, but I'm safe.
Yeah.
And I'm not a mental health professional, so I don't I don't have to mince my words. I can speak plainly with them, but everything's always confidential.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, I would love it if everyone could come 3 times a week and train and get the physical benefits that I know that they need. But it's just not the reality for most people. And so when they come see me for a one-to-one session, I'm then also trying to encourage them to do other forms of movement throughout the week. That doesn't have to be with me. It doesn't have to be one of my group classes either. It could be a hike. It could be a yoga video on YouTube at home, but just so that they're getting 3 sessions of something in. And I encourage it. I know this is probably a terrible statement for my business, but I don't want someone to need me for the rest of their life. I want them to explore and to find new things and to use me for a period of time. And that doesn't mean that I don't have long-term clients. Like I've had some clients who've been with me, since their first kids, and now their kids are 10.
Yeah.
Right? But we're not still doing pre-postnatal stuff. And they just want to keep training with me twice a week. I love that.
Where was movement in each of your pregnancy journeys? Like, were you always active? Because you were active before any of the babies.
Yes. Right? So I started in CrossFit, then got into personal training, had a stint in aerial and pole and silk. Like I love that stuff. That's still a passion that I never get to. I'll get to it one day, more than once a week in my life. But I was really active. And then when I had my first baby, because we didn't have a domestic helper, so we didn't have family help. So it was me as the sole caregiver. Most of my movement was in the form of, a body weight 20-minute workout in the park whilst pushing a stroller, or a baby wearing workout. And in the beginning, when I started Mums and Bubs stuff, there was nothing around. Like there was no mom and baby friendly fitness. And my class wasn't just like let's use our baby as weights. My class was a workout. Because that's what I wanted. I wanted a workout. I wanted to feel my body. I wanted to feel strong in my body. And it was some people's cup of tea and it wasn't others.
Yeah. Wait, what was the workout?
So,
and your baby was just in a pram whilst you
we were baby wearing.
Oh, okay.
And then we would be doing like squats, lunges with dumbbells, with TRX.
With dumbbells?
Yeah.
Whilst your baby was on... Oh my God, that's hardcore.
But we scaled, your fitness level. I'm not a monster. I'm a professional. But I would do it along with the mums because that was the only 2 hours a week that I was getting, those 2 hours. And then when my son got older and was a toddler, we could employ help.
Yeah.
And then, I got back into weightlifting and such. And then my second baby, I was active, but it was more, I was just coaching a lot. And then I would maybe train myself once or twice a week, but nothing planned. I was very sick that pregnancy, and he was my heaviest baby. He was 4.2 kilos and just such low motivation. But I would jump into a class and I would coach. And then that postpartum was the pandemic. And so that became everything body weight, everything online, everything with resistance bands. But I really wanted to move my body. And so I would do 3 times a week, I would just do an online 40-minute class for a whole bunch of mums. And did it make me tons of money? No, but I considered those my workouts.
Yeah.
And then third time round was, this was my hardest pregnancy. I gained the most weight. I was hospitalized for sickness. It was, I did not feel beautiful in that pregnancy. I felt like a little toad. And then the postpartum was really hard. It was the most abdominal separation I'd had, the best pelvic health I'd had, funnily enough. But yeah, that one was tough. And I think, then I have 3 children that I'm trying to spread myself thin for.
Yeah.
And still looking pregnant at times, like up until a year postpartum. That was tough emotionally and mentally because I wanted to be showing up in the gym for the right reasons.
Right.
Not just so that I could look thin again, but so that I could be strong, and that I was doing it because I was motivated to do it, not because I hated myself and my body. And so when I was showing up being like, I don't want to exercise today, but I'm here anyways doing something, I would post that and just be like, I just need to stay consistent so that I can be proud of who I am in 6 months' time, in a year's time. And now I'm almost 2 years postpartum, and I'm finally just starting to feel like myself again.
Yeah.
Like physically and mentally. Because your brain gets eaten by all the kids in terms of I'm thinking about what are all of their different needs, plus my partner's needs, plus my needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. Moms do a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I meant at the beginning of the episode when I was like just dumbfounded by like how much you've kind of done and constantly do as like a superhuman mother.
I also think this is maybe just a female thing.
Yeah.
And of our generation where we were told that we didn't have to choose, where we could have it all. And I think there's a great comedian out there, it's escaping me now, but it's like, I don't actually want it all. Stop saying I can have it all. Like, give me a choice.
Yeah.
Which maybe isn't very feminist, but it does feel like a lot. But what I do have to say is that dads are stepping up. Like, that's what I see a lot too, is that the quality of dad, even from 5 years ago, is totally different. Like when I meet couples now, the dads are so involved. They are equal parents, equal partners. It's not just all on mom. And I think a lot of that has to do because women are equal earners, you know, and they're, so everyone has to do a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk podcasts.
Okay.
Mom. I say mum.
I also say mom.
But it's spelled mom.
It's spelled mom.
So I feel like I need to honor it and just say mom, body, soul. You were doing that during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my gorgeous friend and I, Lindsay Parfit, she is a calm birth instructor. So she did my second birth, taught me some amazing techniques for, getting through birth. She experienced a few years of infertility, or not infertility, but a fertility journey. And I met her in my postpartum.
Okay.
And her postpartum, actually, we connected, we worked with each other and trained each other. And in our sessions, we were just like, why is no one talking about this on a bigger scale? Like individually, each of our clients, because she was a prenatal yoga teacher, she was like, individually, each of our clients were telling us these really common stories. And I was like, and podcasting, I guess, hadn't really hit Hong Kong yet. And we started it as our pandemic project. And we did 2 seasons, and I still put it in my bio because I still think it's going to have a resurgence. But the core stories, or the stories never change. Like those stories from 5 years ago still hold true to this day. Yeah. Solo mom by choice, experiencing matrescence, becoming a power lifter, perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. They all happen to people today.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll take this setup and revitalize the podcast.
I mean, I got to say that the first episode, like Lindsay's story, was super powerful.
Yes.
And I could feel the pain and the loss as I was listening to it this morning, like crying over a hot cross bun. And
we cannot get through that episode without crying.
Yeah. And
we were in the room bawling.
I could feel it. And it made me like very emotional. And even your story in the second episode. How do you decide what stories to tell? Tell it all.
Tell it all. And maybe this is why I've had success within the Instagram sphere, is because of authenticity and vulnerability.
Yeah.
which to me has never been a foreign concept. I've just always been this way.
Yeah.
A bit of an oversharer. But with trying to respect other people, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that, I think, is the hard piece, is what is like trauma dumping, and then what's like genuine vulnerability and authenticity.
Yeah.
And we would sit and have podcast meetings about who would be right. We would have people that we wanted to reach out to and see if they were available to share their stories. We luckily just had this database of people who we knew who had amazing stories.
Yeah.
And yeah, I commend what you're doing solo, but I don't think I could do it, because it was really great to have her input and her feedback on what would be appropriate, and then how things should flow, and what we were missing. And so we tried to find a balance of professionals, of really amazing personal stories, small business owner, mom entrepreneurs.
Was there one that like left a lasting impact on you?
We have different ones. So Lindsay's, I know, was the solo mom by choice episode, which was one of our early episodes. That that was one of our most listened to episodes ever, because the solo mom by choice is becoming more and more a reality for women, whether you're, doing it because you just haven't met the person yet.
Yeah.
Or because you have the funds and you're ready, but your partner isn't ready yet. Or you're gay and you're like, I'm doing this because I need donor sperm anyways. Whatever it is. That was hers. And it was a really amazing story. And I share it to any solo mom that I know. And they're such a tight-knit community. And they really lean on each other. Which is slightly different from when you're then a single mom by divorce or whatever dad was never in the picture, whatever the situation is. And that is also a really tight-knit, strong community for different reasons. And my favorite episode, is a tough one. I think I like the more lighthearted ones. There are lots of very powerful, intense ones. I think I love, oh no, you've put me on the spot. Sorry, I'm taking up too much time. Edit all of this out. There was a woman talking about her home birth in Hong Kong, which is kind of a taboo subject because technically home birth isn't legal.
All right.
But it's not illegal.
Okay.
Like, it's not like people just randomly give birth at home all the time. And as long as you document your home birth, you can have a home birth. You just have to be able to prove that the child was born in Hong Kong.
Please tell me they didn't put it on like Instagram Live.
Well, you have to take lots of pictures and videos. And she details it all in the podcast episode. But it's the woman or the person who's helping deliver the baby, that is what could potentially be illegal. And so that's what she describes, how to keep them safe and keep your baby safe, essentially.
Yeah. I want to go back to your baby wearing workouts.
Yeah.
Like you fostered, I guess, like little kind of community, little like connections there. What, in your opinion, do you see as the biggest benefits in building community through fitness?
Oh, community through fitness, full stop, is like they become your people, they become your friends.
Yeah.
And when you sweat together, when you suffer together, and then you survive together with a smile on your face, everyone feels good after.
Yeah.
Like no one goes away from a sweaty workout class and was like, I wasted my time,
True.
Unless you went to a class and you didn't achieve anything out of it, then you're like, oh, I wasted my time. But especially with the mom community, they're really in it together and they're sharing their milestones. And I think this is just like tribal women stuff. This is how we used to figure out what was going on within the community. Is the women would gather and they'd exchange information, and now we're just doing it over matchas and lattes. Yeah, after a workout class.
Yeah.
And with the baby wearing workout, it's just so convenient for moms because the baby is probably in the carrier needing a nap anyways. The landscape has changed, though. I will say that, like, back when I started, I was an OG.
Yeah.
I did it and people really loved it. And then the pandemic happened and parents got very nervous and we got very anxious about gathering and communities and sweating together, right? And everyone was just trying to do that to protect each other. And I feel like then, you know, politically, like we're now in a recession and moms are typically more price conscious and they would rather do something more affordable or potentially free, or that one of them is just running in their apartment. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And what I've learned over the last like 2 years is that I don't have to be the only one. Like I don't have to be the person running all the classes and being the baby wearing workout woman.
No.
That's not who I want to be.
Yeah.
But if people want to do it with me, I love that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We just did a workout.
We did a bit of a half-ass workout.
It was I put everything into that.
You did.
So was that your gym, the Vault?
So
your husband's gym
is my partner's gym, and it's in Shangwan. I'm so proud of him because he has managed to keep that place open and surviving.
Yeah.
He opened in the 5th wave. So when we had our lockdown where gyms were closed for months, where it was the peak of COVID, where everyone finally got it, he opened then. And
amazing.
Yeah, I think it's coming up to 4 or 5 years. And so he's managed to go through, you know, all the ups and downs of being a business owner. And prior to me joining him at work, I was at a pelvic health physiotherapy clinic. And after the birth of our 3rd child, I just needed more flexibility. And so if I designed a gym, it wouldn't look like that because it would be, you know, lighter and freer and more open. But we've got basically 3 demographics of people and they never cross paths in the sense that we've just got gym membership. So people come, they work out. And then we've got group classes. People who come for group classes never want to have their own gym membership. You never want to just join that cohort of people. They always want to sweat together and move together. And then we have personal training. So one-on-one personal training. And those people, some might get a gym membership, but it's rare. They always want to just come in and be with their PT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just threw around some weights. Back and forth, did a few supersets.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself in the session?
I'm lazy and unmotivated, and I try to always do less.
When you were around the corner from me.
Well, I can't do 10 tricep dips, so I did 5 on the machine, but then I consistently stayed doing 5.
What have you learned about yourself throughout the years through movement?
That our bodies are meant to change, and they are not meant to stay our 20-year-old body. We're meant to grow old and adapt. And what I've really enjoyed is that I've managed to still keep training even when I don't want to.
Yeah.
Because I think that for me, that motivation piece is the hardest bit. Like consistency is always key, but I think for me, it has to stay fun. And I remember my first personal training job, my boss was like, you're not here to work out to have fun and a good time. You're here to work out because it's your job. And that kind of killed it for me. And then I've always, you know, what our industry is like. People look at you and they judge you and they're like, you know, this is your calling card essentially. And what I love about the fitness industry is I think that's changing, is that you don't have to look like a bikini or bodybuilder model all times, all of the year. And what most people are looking for now is longevity.
Yeah.
And to be able to keep training pain-free, injury-free, so that they can live longer.
Yeah.
And being lean isn't the be-all and end-all anymore, I think. And I think the CrossFit community has a lot to do with that. They taught us that your body can move in amazing ways and be pushed to intensity. And I think that the strongman community has a lot to do with that, because there are some strong ass people out there who aren't, stick thin or lean. And as always, the Olympics is always showing us that bodies come in all different shapes and sizes, and they do amazing things.
Yeah. I mean, that really does resonate with me in that, like, when I was in my 30s, I would be chasing the kind of ideal, like the six pack, the big arms and whatever. But more recently, I'm kind of like, I really don't give a shit if I have a little bit of a belly. I don't give a shit if I don't look like that guy on the front cover of the magazine or whatever. And I think that it's a little bit more acceptable to love your body in whatever shape or form it comes in these days.
Yeah.
I feel what I learned about you in our session today is that you are a natural communicator. And that's...
She's a chatty Cathy.
Well, yes, but also within like the way that you move, like you're very open in your movement, I found. And that is to say that like you do all the movement like correctly, and like you're still kind of open to doing more, I felt.
Oh.
Yeah. What then in our session did you learn about me?
That I wasn't, oh, no, no, no. That you are open to doing anything. You went along for the ride, and that you will still push yourself even when you don't want to, because you're like, this is really heavy. And then you still did it anyway.
Yeah. I've said this countless times on this podcast, but I am at my happiest and in my element when I'm moving in whatever capacity, yoga, lifting weights. Even if I'm uncomfortable doing like a pole dancing class, for example, I am in my element because I love it. I love that our bodies can move in such weird and fantastic ways, and that they adapt. Like, we're not supposed to have the bodies that we have when we were 20, like as you said. But yeah, just even when I'm feeling sick, I'm like, we didn't go 100%, maybe 85%.
Being up
70%.
on days that you've got 85 or 75, that is your 100, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so we still showed up. If we hadn't have done that, I probably would have just stayed home baking bread. I wouldn't have worked out today.
Well, in some ways, I wish you would have, because then I would have had some bread to have tomorrow morning. We're going to wrap up. But before we wrap up, we do a little lightning round of go-to questions.
Okay.
All right?
Like
so 10 questions. You don't think too much about it. We start, as always, with your go-to sweat, your go-to workout.
Hip thrusts and lat pull downs.
Okay, well, we did that today. Love it. This is specific to you, go to exercise or movement for moms who are recovering postpartum but want to feel strong and connect to their bodies.
Connection breath. So the connection breath is the lift of the pelvic floor and then drawing in of the lower abdominals and then the rest of the abdominals. And that I find is the basis for all our movements. So we do the connection breath before we stand, the connection breath before we lift, the connection breath before we engage the core.
There you go. What is your go-to treat meal?
Ooh, instant noodles. Like that's like a guilty pleasure. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, like
mi goreng or a hot spicy soup. It's
so just like add water,
like ramen. You do not a cup noodle, but still put in the pot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like that red packet one. I don't know what it's called.
Yes. I know that one.
Go to mom product.
Right now, anything from Raw Lily. So their new brand shameless plug. They're a new brand in Hong Kong that are bringing in lots of different clean products. And so one of my favorite ones is the Hatch lip and nipple butter. So it's like pawpaw cream. So it's edible. You can put it on your lips. It's moisturizing. But if you're a breastfeeding mother, you can also put it on your nipples.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, raw lily.
Raw lily. So they bring in lots of products and it's no nasties. They do all the research for you. So you don't have to think about anything.
Raw lily sponsorship deal.
Yeah, amazing.
Go to stress reliever.
Yoga. Yeah. Just a hot, sweaty vinyasa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Do you go to a specific class or studio? Do you do that kind of just...
No, I just do that on like YouTube.
Yeah.
Or if I have the time, I am happy to try any yoga studio in Hong Kong. Just switch my brain off, move.
Do you like a hot room?
I'm partial to a hot room. Yeah.
Have you ever done my class before?
No. Okay. That's the next episode.
Yeah.
We all do family fun.
Yeah. Go to travel destination.
So basic, but Thailand.
Yeah, that's a popular one. It's like, I agree.
But actually now moving more towards Vietnam. Yeah.
Okay.
Quieter, less busy.
Go to morning routine.
Coffee first.
What's your coffee?
Well, no, the bathroom and brush teeth and then coffee.
What's your coffee order?
So coffee at home is Bandit coffee. Use code Ziggy10. Bandit coffee, 2 shots, and then oat milk, just a dash of oat milk.
Yeah.
And then when I'm out and about, it's an iced oat milk latte.
Bandit coffee sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
So this free advertising. Go to app.
My budgeting app. This is a new thing that I've done just this year. My goal was to become more financially clear and financially literate.
Yeah.
And so just basic bookkeeping.
Okay.
What comes in, what goes out.
Right. What is it called?
So this one is called, I think it's just called like money budget, but I'm shifting to another one called spending budget. They're really interesting.
Okay.
Really clever names.
Go to book.
To read?
Yeah.
This is terrible.
You don't read books.
No,
Okay.
I Audible.
Listen, okay.
I Audible,
What
and they're all self-help.
Okay. I love a self-help.
So the one
Admirable.
I'm currently reading is listening to is a Gabor Mate one, the Gifts of Imperfection.
Okay. And what is that about?
Just how we're all flawed human beings. Yeah.
Okay. I love it. I go to workout song.
WAP. Cardi B.
Oh, right.
Making me stop.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
That's my vibe.
That is, motivation.
Hip thrust and lat pull downs.
Yeah. If you could give just one piece of advice to every mother listening, something to uplift and empower them today, what would it be?
You are doing a good job. No one is watching. Everything is okay.
I mean, that could be extended to anyone, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your vagina is great.
That can be the soundbite of the episode. So what's next for you?
What's next is I would really love to train as a doula and become a birth support person.
Okay.
And create a more holistic plan for people to travel through. So they do fitness, breath work, and I support them at their births.
Yeah.
That would be.
Is that what a doula does?
That is what a doula, yeah, a childbirth support person, either for mom herself or a couple. Maybe she just does the antenatal classes, but typically a doula is there at your birth and providing whatever non-medical support that you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in 1 year's time, is that enough time?
Maybe a 2026 goal to start the training, but then you need to be a year of practice before you can start calling yourself a doula.
Great. Well, I look forward to seeing what you do next. How do people find you?
On Instagram at zig.fitmama.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ziggy. I have loved getting to know you a little bit better, and I have learned a lot about being a mother and birthing. I really am excited to see what you do next, and I hope to hear your podcast revitalized.
Yeah, me too. I hope so.
Yeah.
Maybe this is like the little kick up the bum I needed.
There we go. Launching people's dreams.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ziggy. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Move, Sweat, Discover. If you liked the episode, please subscribe and write us a 5-star review. See you next time.